Right, here we go. 7th level open house. So we'll definitely start. You guys have already introduced yourself. You know one another. Why don't we start with just sharing a little bit about how long you have had your license and maybe what you did prior to real estate and what got you into real estate. Start, Steph?
Sure. So I really have just been here for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I'm still going through Process Street right now because I actually, although I'm trying to do this full time, I also have a part-time job at a university. I'm an academic advisor and student success counselor, so I do that. And I've done academic advising, school guidance and counseling for like 8 years. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you have a vision of sticking with that, or do you ultimately see your whole career being in real estate?
I want to transfer over to real estate.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just kind of right now like a a waiting game until I get ramped up and everything else.
Okay.
So
Well, hopefully these open houses will get you going. All right, terrific.
All right.
Rothy?
So I'm brand new. I just got my license numberized today. And
Yesterday.
I was just setting up. No experience as such as in real estate, but I was into sales, the ticketing sales and stuff, like for the airways and stuff, like 2 years, almost 14 years ago.
Okay.
And then I've been, not 14, maybe 10. Yeah, 10. My oldest daughter is 10. And then the kids have been with them almost.
Okay, so you stayed home
Until
for a
now,
little bit.
yep.
Okay, great.
Now that they're on their own, I'm like ready to go venture out and build a career for myself. And I'm going in full time with this.
Terrific. Okay.
My
So
name
you're
is
the
Ryan.
resident expert here. You've been here the longest.
Yeah, about a month and a half, I guess. Long time.
Yeah.
Before this, I was a personal trainer. Actually, still am. So I'm kind of, doing both at the same time.
All right.
Planning on to continue to do that too, just because you're meeting so many people face to face.
Absolutely. Have you met Eric McGee?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
So
great.
he's definitely leveraged
Oh,
his
yeah.
personal training into his real estate
Yep.
business. So, yeah. So we are here to talk about hosting an open house. So have any of you hosted yet? Okay. So let's get started. So first of all, as you're just getting started in the business, you probably don't have any listings of your own as yet. That does not mean that you cannot host an open house. Actually, it's an opportunity for you to build contacts by hosting an open house that could ultimately lead to a listing as well. Any thoughts on why the contacts that you make while hosting an open house, somebody else's listing, could lead to a listing for you?
There might be someone who's just looking and walking through and not having an agent represent them.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm thinking.
Okay.
And I'm probably looking for someone to represent them.
Okay.
Anyway,
That could be.
that could be.
Yeah, so if they're looking to buy a house, what else might be happening?
Oh, also might be trying to sell there.
They may need to sell a house,
Right.
right? So in order to buy the next house, they may need to sell a house. So if they are coming into an open house that you're hosting, you may have an opportunity to get their listing as well as help them buy. What other possible scenarios could happen while you're hosting a house that could lead to you getting a listing? Any thoughts? Have you thought about that? Okay, so another possible scenario would be that you are hosting an open house and a family comes to look because this house is similar to their house and they want to sell their house. So they don't have any intention of buying the house that you're hosting the open house with. They may be just checking out some competition as they get their thoughts together on wanting to sell their house. So it's an opportunity for you to make that connection. So how do you go about securing an open house to host? So I'm going to share with you practical experience just from what I did, what I learned along the way. So the first thing is that you may have already seen that some teams or agents post on our Facebook, closed Facebook group, or even within the market center that they have open houses available for an agent to sit for them. So that's what I would consider a passive approach to you securing an open house. What I'm going to encourage you to do is go find an open house. So something that I found to be very effective was on Mondays, so recommended on Mondays, that you find out which listings will have an open house, and the best way to do that is almost to go door knocking in the office. So go to all the teams that are here and say, hey, do you have any open houses this weekend? I'm available to sit, and build a relationship with those teams. You know, all the teams in the office will have a number of open houses each weekend. So what I found was that in doing that, you know, I hosted open houses for the Stein group, I hosted open houses for the Gorham group, the Dickerman team. So there was varied teams that I hosted for, and each one of them taught me something different, because each team has certain standards or expectations around how they want an open house hosted. So, you know, for example, you know, the Steins, if you're hosting one of their open houses, they'll give you a list of requirements. Here are the things that you have to do if you're going to host one of our open houses. You know, one of those is that you have a coloring book and crayons available if kids come to the open house. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go over all the details of what's in this bag. But you know, that was a little tidbit. They also had a very specific feedback sheet. You know, after the open house, they expect you to follow up with them and give you feedback on who came through the house and what they had to say about it. And they want your input on the house as well. The Gorhams, you know, they, I actually did several for them, and they would have a prepared binder. So each week, you know, I would reach out and say, do you have an open house this weekend? Yes. They would have a binder prepared for me before Thursday that had the MLS listing, the seller's disclosure, really everything there was to know about that home. And they had a sign runner. So they had somebody that actually put the open house signs up. So each team gives you kind of a different perspective, and you get to kind of feel out, what do I like? You know, if it were my listing, how would I want the open house to be hosted? But the key point there is be proactive and go after finding the open house. And I suggest you're marking Monday, maybe Monday afternoon to do that, because after coming off the weekend, that's when they're going to be making those decisions as to which listings do we need to have an open house. And if you are not comfortable breaking the ice with knocking on the doors of the teams, I can help you with that. You know, so come by the MCA office. I'd be happy to do introductions. But honestly, they would welcome your knock. They are always there. And if they don't have something, give them your card. Say, if you ever have an open house, please reach out to me. And what started to happen for me was I didn't have to go to them anymore. They were coming to me and saying, can you sit an open house this weekend? So that was great. So that's almost a form of lead generating, right? You're having to initiate it. You're having to make that contact with the team. So another thing that you want to make sure from a supply perspective is you need to have roughly 5 to 10 open house signs. Now we sell those in the office. They're $10 a piece. You can have the cost of those signs added to your monthly agent bill, and you'll have them forever. So they basically are a little sign that says open house. You stick them in the ground as directional signs that will help people get to the open house that you're hosting. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to set those up later. So that's something that you need to have, and that's an investment in hosting these open houses. The other thing that you want to make sure that you have is the app for the eKey. So some listings have a lockbox that is a combination code, but others are the Supra key lockbox, and you cannot get into that home without the app. You get the app at Suburban West. So you have to actually physically go to Suburban West and purchase your code to have access to that. And then that allows you to gain access to a home that has the Supra lockbox. And that's not just for hosting open houses that you'll need that app. That would be as you begin to have buyers and want to show them properties. If the home has a Supra lockbox, you have that app, you're good to go and get into that on your own and not rely on the listing agent to be available, because that might not line up with when your buyers are available. So having that Supra app is a good practice. Okay, so you have secured your open house. You know which open house you're going to be hosting. So the other thing that I would suggest to you in selecting which open house you want to host is do your research, okay? So if you go to a team and they say, yes, I have these 4 open houses available, don't just say, well, I'll take that one. You know, so go into Bright, go into the MLS and look at the listings, because not all listings are created equal, right? So you want to look for the open house that you feel is going to get the most draw. So what are some things that you think would be pluses in a listing or an open house that's taking place?
Lower price and lower day on market.
Okay, so one thing that I found that I love to do was if I was hosting a house in a lower price range, I was guaranteed that I was probably going to see a lot of first-time home buyers. And I found that that was a great connection for me. I was comfortable talking to the first-time home buyers about how to secure pre-approval for their mortgage. So yes, so if you're finding I want a lot of people coming in, I want to work with first-time home buyers, a lower priced listing may be one criteria that you look at. Anything else come to mind?
Good school district, maybe?
Okay.
Isn't a good school, probably.
Sure. Yeah. Is this a sought-after school district,
Yeah.
Downingtown East versus West? You know,
yeah.
so
That's all ridiculous.
you know that could be another thing that you look at. Anything else? So a couple other things, maybe days on market, right? So is this a listing that's been on for 135 days? Well, it's probably not going to be a hot open house, right? Unless they've just done a big price reduction or something that's going to draw people in. You know, that could be a factor for you to look at. And then another thing to consider is new listing, right? So it just was listed. This weekend is going to be the first showing, the first open house for this listing. That is something that's a hot listing. If it's never been shown before, if it's never had an open house before, you're guaranteed to get a lot of foot traffic. And that's really your goal, right? So your goal is not necessarily to sell that house that you're hosting the open house for. Your goal, you may. My second open house, I actually had someone come in and hand an offer. They said, I have an offer on the house. So it can happen. However, what you're really truly there for is to get contacts, right? You're there to make contacts to add to your database that could result in a client for you. And that actually is what happened for me with my first client. I met them at an open house. They were first-time home buyers, and they called me and said, we really enjoyed our conversation with you. We'd like you to represent us. What?
That's awesome.
That was like, eureka. And I had intention, we talk about lead generation every 5 days a week for 3 hours, right? So for me, open houses were lead generation time, okay? So I looked at that as one of my lead generation days. So I wanted to make sure that I was securing an open house that was going to yield me at least 20 contacts that I could add to my database, okay? So again, that's sort of your motivation. You want to be selective around which open houses you're looking to set. And, if the only ones available don't meet that criteria that I identified, that's okay. But you want to almost prioritize, you know, and not just blindly accept an open house, because if you're investing in the time and getting ready for it and all the work that you do leading up to an open house and then no one comes, you know, that's a bit of a letdown. It could happen though. I had some that I had lines of people, and I had some that was just a trickle and maybe 6. But one of those 6 could be your next client. But the point is, I'm just saying, be selective, look at the listings before you agree to host them, okay? So the next thing that you can do in starting to prepare for your open house is create a flyer. Okay, so this is something that you can create through eEdge, which we have available to us. This is a sample of one of the flyers that I created for one of the open houses that I hosted. I pulled the photos right off of Bright, right off of the MLS listing. I would just drag the photos in. If you need help on how to create your first flyer, if you haven't done that yet, that's something that you can set up a time to meet with Lisa, and she can help you understand how you can use eEdge to create a flyer. So why did I create the flyer? So I would use the flyer to promote my open house through door knocking, okay? So we'll talk about that in a bit. I also had a pile of the flyers at the open house, not because the clients, they already were there, but mainly because it had my branding on it, right? So one thing that you'll find when you're hosting an open house is they may have, the listing agent may already have pre-branded marketing there. Tuck that away during the open house. This is your open house that you're hosting. So you'll see on my flyer, I always said hosting. I'm hosting the open house. It's not my listing, but I am the host. And I would make sure that any of the marketing that was out during the open house had my branding on it, okay? This is your opportunity to lead generate. So those were really 2 reasons or purposes why I would create a flyer each week. And then I would start to research my open house. So I would make sure that it was on the MLS and it indicated that there was an open house scheduled. So the listing agent is responsible for making sure that's on there. You're just double checking to make sure that that is on there. And then you can begin to door knock. Okay, so something that I would do would be, well, first I guess you could circle call, right? So when I say circle call, do you know what I mean? No.
Just, is it like the area?
Yeah, so Anne-Marie through coaching gives you access to Cole Realty. I don't know if you have that login and password, but she can show you how to log into Cole Realty. And that's an opportunity for you to acquire telephone numbers, even names of the people that live in the houses in the surrounding area where you're hosting the open house. So why might you want to call those people? Any thoughts?
I think if I was on the street, I would just be curious how much it's going for, what it looks like, and what I need to do to update mine to get, when I do put it on the market, the best possible price.
Yeah. So truly, it's another lead generation opportunity, right? Like you said, you get them on the phone, it's an opportunity for you to engage in conversation. Through the conversation, show them your value as an agent. I'm hosting this open house on Sunday from 1 to 3. I'd love for you to stop by and take a look at it. Tell me what you think about it. And by the way, who do you know that might be looking to also sell their house or buy a house and you'd like them to be part of your neighborhood? Can I call them and invite them to come to the open house? So doing that circle calling is another lead generation opportunity, okay? So you see that there's purpose and intention behind hosting the open house, right? It's not just about the actual open house itself on Sunday from 1 to 3.
Mhm.
It's the lead generation opportunity that you have leading into it through the circle calling and then the door knocking. Okay, so the door knocking, I'm a big fan of door knocking. So I love that face-to-face contact, and having someone kind of put their eyes on me and then equate it to realtor, so that again, when they come to thinking about listing their own home, or they hear someone they know is thinking of listing their own home, I felt that there was a better visual connection for them to have seen me and heard me, had a conversation with me, than a phone call. That's just my own
Quick
personal
question
preference.
about the door knocking though. Do they look at you as soliciting, like, you know?
So
Because some developments do not allow that, and then how do you go about it? Like, how do you find if that is allowed in that community or not?
if it's a community,
Or
they might have a no soliciting sign
Mhm.
at the head of the community.
Okay.
So for me, it was information. So I wasn't selling anything,
Mhm.
right? So one thing that I would encourage you is don't think of the rejection,
Mhm.
right? Because you are going to have people that say, I'm not interested.
Right.
Or you're going to have people that don't even answer the door. And that's okay.
Mhm.
That's their choice.
Mhm.
But you may have that next person answer the door that is your next client, right? So you want to be intentional around the door knocking, and a very easy script to use when you're door knocking is to say, hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm a realtor at Keller Williams, and I'm going to be hosting an open house this Sunday from 1 to 3 at 123 Main Street, right up the road. Is there anyone that you can think of that I should call to notify of the open house? Or would you know of, or would you be interested in coming by and seeing it? So it's an opportunity, again, for you to engage in conversation with them. I would have my flyer with me, and I would give them my flyer that has my contact information on it,
Mhm.
and I would typically give them a business card as well. I found more often than not that people were curious, like Stephanie said. They wanted to hear, when is it going on? How much is it going for? Honestly, I will share one of my favorite stories. I was door knocking. I typically would door knock Fridays and or Saturdays, depending on the community where the open house was. Because that's also the day that I was putting my directional signs out for the open house. So I was getting into the neighborhood, I was getting to know the neighbors, I was putting my signs out. So I was working that area. That was my job that day.
I missed that. Was that the day before the open house?
Friday and Saturday, I would door knock. That was my lead generation for those days, right? So that was my lead generation on Friday and Saturday. I would set a goal.
Mhm.
I am going to make 20 contacts today. So I would knock on the doors until I made 20 contacts. So once I had 20 contacts, I had hit my goal and I was able to go home if I wanted to.
I have a question. Do you consider a contact when you have their email and all that stuff, or do you mean face-to-face contact? It doesn't matter if you get their info.
So that's a great question. So what is a contact? A contact is having a conversation around real estate. Okay, so the benefit of using the Cole Realty is that you can get their name, their phone number, and you already know their address, right? So I would actually go into MLS, and I would, whatever the streets were that I was going to door knock, I would pull the public records for those streets, and that has that information. It has the house number, the owner's name, and then I would use that almost as my information gathering tool. So after I had a conversation with them at the door, I would then make a notation, looking to move a year from now. Make a notation, have kids that are going to be entering school thinking of stepping up in 6 months. So I would make little notes on my Excel spreadsheet as I door knocked that I would then, after door knocking, go back to my database and input all the contacts that I made, any of the contact information that I had, and any notes that I needed to make. So when I would door knock with them, there may be an opportunity for you to get additional contact information. Say, I would be happy to, if you get into a conversation around schools, for example, you could say, I would be happy to send you the statistics on what's happening in the Downingtown East School District right now as far as home sales. And what's the best email for me to send that to? What's the best phone number for me to follow up with you? And that's sort of your opportunity. If you're going to offer an item of value to them, then you can gather that information from them and follow through on it, right? So, for example, the Downingtown East School District, where can you get that information? Actually, the Suburban West website has tons of reporting and statistical data that you can pull that I would use as an item of value, not just when I was door knocking for an open house, but if I was door knocking just as a lead generation technique on another day. I would have that sort of handout. If I was in a Downingtown East School District, I would have those stats that I would pull from Suburban West website, and I would have that to say, here's what's going on in Downingtown East. If you're interested, I could send this to you quarterly. What's the best email for me to send that to? And I'd have my little spreadsheet, write their email down, and that's how I would capture that information. So, but a contact is really a conversation about real estate. So it's really that final question, who do you know that I should contact today that may be looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate? That's your contact right there. You've engaged in a conversation around real estate. Okay? So let's see. So then you also want to make sure that you are having a conversation with the listing agent. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have an idea of any special features in the house, that if there's anything that would be important for you to know. Will the seller be home when you arrive for the open house? And I will share with you this document that I'm referring to, you can access on the KW Exton coaching page. It's there, verbatim. So you don't need to write down like everything that I'm saying when I'm listing things, because you can access it from this document. So, asking, will the seller be home when I arrive for the open house? Is the property vacant? And if the property is vacant, are the utilities on? Okay, because that could be a deal breaker, right?
Yeah.
So you also, if the property is vacant, there are some things that you want to think about. And I sat at least one vacant open house. So you want to think about, well, I better bring some toilet paper. I better bring some hand soap and some paper towels. So if anyone needs to use the restroom, they'll be able to, because you provide those things for them. And that's something that you can kind of have in your handy dandy to-go bag. So if you get to an open house and you feel like I need to resupply some toilet paper, you've got it available. And you also want to ask, what type of lockbox is it? And what is the access code? So you're going to need the combination to get in, or again, your Supra app to get into the property. It's not necessary for you to preview the home before the open house. You'll have time to do that as you get there and set up, but you do want to have that conversation with the listing agent. So for example, I hosted an open house where there was a swimming pool. And so I wanted just to know a little bit more about the pool, because I knew that was going to be an important feature. Anyone that was coming wanted a pool. So I wanted just to know a little bit more about the pool. You know, when was the liner replaced? Have there been any, the pool be open? Will it not, you know, so that type of feature that you want to make sure you have a sense of that may not be in the seller's disclosure, okay? And if you're going to a vacant property to sit an open house, you want to bring maybe a folding table and chair, so you'll have something to put your sign-in sheet, your papers on, and maybe a place for you to sit. Because if it's not where you're entertaining and greeting guests 100% of the time, you may want to sit down. And there's no furniture that you're going to be sitting Indian style on the floor. So, let's see. So we already talked about you're going to print your own flyers for distribution to the public. If you do see that they have flyers, you can tuck those in a drawer. Just remember to put them back where you found them when you leave. But you can promote your flyers, and you can let them know, I am going to door knock on Friday and Saturday to promote the open house. I'm going to be doing circle calling on Thursday to promote the open house. So you can let the listing agent know the things that you're going to do to help promote this open house for them. And those are the type of things, that call to the listing agent, those are the type of things that will get you a repeat callback from that agent. Because if they know you're going to take this open house seriously, they're going to want you to host again. Does that make sense? You also, in that conversation, want to agree to when they would like you to provide feedback for them. Okay, some want it immediately after the fact on Sunday. Some want it by 10 a.m. Monday morning. So you want to clarify that expectation as when do they want feedback and what kind of feedback do they want from you. So the thing that I would say here is, you know, the big thing that they're going to want is they're going to want the contact information of the people that came through the open house. So what you want to provide to them is the contact information for the people that came through the open house that already have an agent, okay? So if they did not have an agent, those are clients that you want to hold on to follow up with, okay? So just so we're clear, so those are your leads now that you created by hosting the open house, right? But any that came through that had an agent already representing them, that's what you'll pass on to the listing agent. So one thing that you may hear, so if the seller is present as you arrive to set up the open house, or if the seller comes back early and you're still there closing up, you know, they may want feedback from you. How did it go? Who came? How many people? Okay, so that's not for you to discuss with the seller, right? So you are not their agent. You are not the seller's agent. You're just hosting the open house. So any feedback that they get will come from their listing agent. Okay, so here's a script. And again, this is on this document that you guys can access through the KW Exton coaching page. Mr. Seller, I have spoken to your listing agent who asked me to provide them feedback right after the open house. He will be contacting you shortly. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to host the open house today. It was nice to meet you. So you're not brushing them off. You're not being rude to them. I can't give you that. You're setting an expectation. Your listing agent has asked me to give them feedback. I'm calling them in about 20 minutes, and then they're going to follow up with you directly. But thank you for letting me host. What a beautiful home you have. You know, that's something along that line. Make sense? If they push, like if they want to push it, you could say, although I work at Keller Williams, I don't represent you. Okay, this information is confidential in nature and is best to discuss with your listing agent, as they are your designated agent. Okay, that makes sense? All right, so let's move on to the open house bag. Okay, so this is my open house bag. It's just a bag I had. It's a good size. And this bag has evolved through my various open house experiences. So my first open house, I followed exactly what was on this checklist of what should be in there. And then as I hosted open houses, I realized, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. And then I also found that my personality type is I need some level of organization. So I actually created an open house box within my bag. So it's like a little portable file box, because what you'll see listed on here are a number of forms that you should have available, okay? So I created folders within, so I always had these items at the ready. So for example, on this list, it says you should have 20 consumer notices with you, okay? So that is in the event that you get into a dialogue with a client at the open house, that you have a consumer notice ready to review with them and have them sign it. Because that's step one in building that relationship with a potential buyer client, right? So each of my folders I labeled, each of them I put copies of the respective forms. So the files that I have, consumer notice, blank buyer agency contracts, seller's disclosure on the property. So obviously you can print the seller's disclosure from the MLS for that listing. I suggest printing it, and I suggest reading it. So that's one of the pieces of hosting the open house. You want to do your prep work, and part of that is knowing that house, okay? So the seller's disclosure gives you an opportunity to understand maybe when the furnace was replaced, if they've had any stucco issues. So by the square footage of the home, that's on the MLS sheet, but you want to study the property. So as potential buyers come through and they ask you certain questions, you sound knowledgeable, right? By creating the flyer, I put a lot of the stats right on the flyer. So that's also kind of an easy reference. Oh, this is 3685 square feet. So it's right at the ready if you're not memorizing everything. But the seller's disclosure, you want to make sure you've read a couple of times and become familiar with maybe any history on the house. If you don't know, because it's not in the seller's disclosure, then you don't know. You can say, that's something that I can bring back to the listing agent, and they can follow up and get you an answer or information on that. But the seller's disclosure is in your files, an MLS printout for the open house. Now, there is another branding opportunity. So when you print the client view of the MLS listing, you have, when you get to the print function, you have the opportunity to check the box to have it branded to you. So based on how you set up your profile in Bright, with a photo, with your contact information, when you select that, that will automatically print on the MLS sheet. So that's typically something that's one of the first things that clients want to grab, is that MLS sheet, because it has all the stats on the house, right? How large it is, what size each of the rooms are, what's included with the sale, what's not. So having your branding on that is something that I would recommend. So having some of those printed out. You can have a seller's guide and a buyer's guide printed out. Now those are also available on eEdge in the marketing section that you can brand to yourself. And just having a copy of that with you in case you get an appointment at the open house, so you're ready to have that conversation with them. blank buyer and seller appointment forms. Those are also on your KW Exton coaching site. And then open house sign-in sheet and feedback forms. So as I mentioned earlier, some teams have a specific sign-in sheet or a specific feedback form that they'd like you to use. I actually experimented with a few different versions. One was, I can share all of these with you guys. Here, I'll just give each of you, since we're such a small group, I'll give each of you one of each of these that I have experimented with. And I'll talk to you about how I would use these. Thank you. There you go. So you can see that this is your opportunity to capture their information. This is your opportunity to find out, are they working with another agent? You know, so again, this is in my little file box. And we're going to talk about how we use these items that are in our box in a moment. Other things that I had in here that are on our list are pens, a flashlight, a bottle of water, business cards, a stapler, a notebook in case you need to take any miscellaneous notes, and then like a floor mat. So if it's a rainy day, like having at the dollar store, you can buy just like a floor mat to put down so people come in, they can wipe their feet. A lot of times now you'll see that the listing agent will have, please remove your shoes, and they'll have, you know, or they'll have the shoe covers there. But if they don't have that and people are leaving their shoes on and it's pouring rain out, you want them to have something to wipe their feet on. So literally $1 at the dollar store. It was in my bag, and if it was raining, I could just put that down. The other thing that I discovered that wasn't on my list originally was a 9-volt battery, because I arrived and the smoke detector was chirping, chirping. So I was like, I need a 9-volt battery. So they went into my open house bag, so if I ever encountered that again, I would have a 9-volt battery to change the smoke detector. But I created this little, you know, carrier. I had a little business card holder, so it's like everything is on the ready, right? Everything was just ready to come out of my box onto the table, and I wasn't having to spend time every week kind of gathering these things and recreating the wheel. This is my open house bag. I grabbed the bag, put it in my car, off I went. My pen, my little notebook, my hairbrush, stapler, my flashlight, and you know, so I had Philly's schedules made, so I had those on my little open house. Yeah,
Do you find them useful? Do people actually?
You know, I learned over time, no.
Okay.
You know, I think that it could be a conversation starter. I got them because I was a big door knocker, so I got them as a kind of a handout. But at the end of the day, this isn't about real estate, right? So I really kind of shifted my energy into things that were more real estate related, like printing out the Downingtown East schools statistics and things that customers would see that I could add value to their knowledge around the real estate market. Philly's schedule is nice, but not necessarily a business driver. And as I mentioned, I got the idea from the Stein team. I would go on Crayola.com and print out blank coloring sheets and crayons, and those came in handy a few times as families are coming through your open house and the kids are scary. You sit them down with some crayons Now, other people were like, oh my gosh, aren't you afraid the kids are gonna
Yeah.
ride all over? I found that it helped in certain situations. It shows a level of preparedness, it shows a level of thoughtfulness, you know, that you thought about keeping the kids entertained during your open house.
What if they did?
It's a great question.
You gotta clean up. You gotta clean
Magic
up.
eraser
Okay,
then
right.
becomes.
Yeah, I mean,
I
often,
did that too then.
so as we get through what happens like during the open house, right? So I found oftentimes is I became almost the keeper of the kids, right? Because you're not going with people through the house during the open house. You've greeted them, they've signed in, you've talked to them, which we're gonna get to. But the kids were kind of there on the floor, coloring, and I kind of had an eye on them. And I never had a problem, and I didn't always pull it out. It was like if I felt like this is a Crayola moment, I had it available. The other thing that I would prepare, and again, I had a couple different options for this, was some little stands that I would put throughout the house, again, as a reminder of who I am, my value. These are flyers that you can make through eEdge, easy. You know, this is, do you want to know how much your home is worth? And then I would have, you know, my business cards here, or I would have a sign-in sheet there, put your information here, and that's another way that you can get back in touch with somebody. And then, you know, this is another example, sort of as I evolved in my open houses, I upgraded to a metal frame instead of the plexi frame. But this is like the market stats that I was telling you that I got from Suburban West. And, you know, I just made a little, would you like more information like this? Sign up. And I would put a little sign up sheet. And I would sprinkle these throughout the house, maybe one in the basement, one in the living room. So as they walked through the house, they had various touch points to find maybe another opportunity for me to gather their information or stay in touch with them. So,
Can I take a picture?
oh, sure. Yeah.
It helps sometimes.
Yeah. And then, you know, sometimes you'll hear people talk about baking cookies, bringing snacks, bringing water, you know. So I did that a few times. I brought cookies and water, and what I found was most of the time I was bringing the majority of that home. So I evolved over time. I bought a tray and I would put snacks in it. Chips and cookies and granola bars, and, you know, so it could almost capture anybody's taste. You know, somebody needed a salt fix, somebody needed a sweet fix, somebody was healthy. And that was something that I could just bring back out every week. Obviously, I had to watch the expiration dates. You know, replenish it each week before I went, and have my water in my tray, and I put that out. And I found that people were more likely to take that. And again, you kind of fit everybody's need for whatever their snack need was. Again, a lot of the kids like the snacks. And I actually kept that in my car when I was taking my buyers out to show them houses after they had signed with me, is because you're going out and you're looking at 3-4 homes in a day, and, you know, it's crossing over a meal or something, just saying, hey, let's take a break and kind of recap what we've seen so far. Hope in the back of my car, would you like a snack and a water? You know, and I found that it worked not just for the open house, but to have that as I was showing buyers properties as well. So, and these are all things that just every open house that I did, it was kind of like tricks and tips kind of thing. That went well, that didn't go well. Next time I need to do this or that, you know, so the snacks kind of evolved. And sometimes you'll have a seller say, I can leave these out too. A seller say, I'll bake cookies. I'll leave cookies out. Great. You know, they have the cookies and beverages out as well. In one home that I did, they had Siri, not Siri, Alexa playing, you know, just mellow music. You know, so every open house takes on a little different twist. Okay, so any questions at this point about your go bag, your getting kind of prepared leading up to the open house?
Can you bring your own speaker to play music?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing though is you need Wi-Fi for that, right? So
Well, it depends.
yeah,
I have a Bluetooth speaker and I can connect it to Spotify.
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think you have to, I would have it and then
Yeah.
you decide, right? One thing is that if it's going to be like a hustling, bustling open house, that could just become noise. Whereas if it's more of a, people are trickling in, that might be nice background noise. It's almost like the crayons, right? I had them. I didn't always put them out to start, but if the opportunity presented itself, I had it to put them out. So the music could be the same thing.
And it's an open house, so how do you protect yourself? Or the
Yeah,
house?
yeah, good. Yeah, so we're getting
Oh, you're getting
up to,
there.
yeah, we're getting up to that. So so let's see. You want to arrive at the open house. I'm losing my thoughts here. You want to arrive at the open house. Oftentimes, I would get there like a half an hour before, and that's another thing that you can tell the listing agent. You can say, I'm going to arrive a half an hour early, so it would be great if the sellers could be out at that time. So you want to get there a bit early because you might get some people that arrive early. You also want time to walk through the house yourself. So safety tip number one, you go in, you know, whether it's the combo, what have you. If it's a combination, you're going to open it, the key's going to be there. Unlock the door, take the key in with you, okay? And then lock the door behind you. Okay, so you're just gotten into the house, and now you want to open the house up. Okay, turn all the lights on throughout the entire house, top to bottom. If it's a cool, like a nice spring day, there's a breeze, you can open some windows, open some shades. However, leave the house exactly as you found it. So if the windows were closed, close them and lock them. Shades were down, pull them down. Lights were off, turn them all back off. So that's important. But the safety feature there is lock the door behind you when you first come in while you familiarize yourself with the house and you're going room by room, opening things up, checking things. That's your opportunity as well to check for cleanliness, you know. So I also had a box of Lysol wipes in my bag. And that was if you needed to wipe off a sink or you needed to clean a toilet, you had those there just to give it a little fresh touch. And if there's dirty laundry, you know, that you shift that under a bed or, just try to, as you're walking through, opening things up, turning lights on, just also look at what are the buyers going to see here. Is there a quick hit that I can take to make the house look a little bit better? Okay. The listing agent should have done that and set that expectation. And I, for the most part, found that to be okay, that they were left in great shape, but you never know what you might walk into. So,
I was just curious, like, what if you walk in and the bed's a mess and not made or anything? Is that something that you would fix, or, I mean?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't go into, kind of fixing their personal stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would let the listing agent know.
Okay.
That would be feedback that I would give. I think in one house that I did, I had to share, that there were a lot of light bulbs that were out in the house, so it made it appear darker than it needed to be, or there were some dead bugs in like the windowsills. Like those are detailed things, but you know, the listing agent was appreciative to hear that because that's something they can coach their clients on as they go forward. But no, I wouldn't go that far. But if it's a quick little, put some things under the bed with your foot or wipe a countertop, then you have your stuff there. So as you walked through, you have gotten everything up, you're ready to open your house, right? It's okay to open it a little bit early. Again, you might get some early visitors that have lined up to see so many open houses in a day, and if you get your door open first, they may be your first clients, right? And they'll appreciate that. Whew, yeah, now we can get to the other ones. We were worried we weren't going to see everything. Well, you've just made their day. You are the realtor of their dreams. So when you think about that greeting, okay, so people are starting to come in. So you want to stay centrally located, right? So you want to think of yourself as the greeter. Okay, you're not going to lead or follow people around the house. It is your job to ensure you know who is in the house at all times. So if you actually go upstairs with a client and other people are coming in, you don't know that they're there. First of all, it's a missed opportunity for you to get them signed in and engage with them. And they may leave because there's no one here. So you are sort of that stationary person in the foyer. You're welcoming people in, small talk. Isn't it a beautiful day outside today? I'm Kathleen. I'm hosting the open house today. I'm an agent with Keller Williams. Can you sign in? I have my sign-in sheet here. Also, here's an MLS sheet. And the sellers would really appreciate your feedback. So before you leave today, I'd love if you could stop back with me and share your thoughts on the house. So that would be sort of a script, a greeting script that you can practice. There are some scripts within this that you can use. So here are some of the things that I've learned along the way is I was getting people to sign in if I immediately saw that they did not have an agent. That was my cue, right? So I want to be their agent. So I learned, I guess the hard way, that I was saying, well, how about if I reach out to you tomorrow and we set up a time to get together so I can find out more about what you're looking for in a home, and I can let you know how I can best represent you as your real estate agent. Well, I should have set the appointment right then and there. Like I should have committed to the time in the moment. So instead of saying, how about if I reach out to you tomorrow, I should have said, how about if we meet at my office tomorrow, would noon or 5 p.m. work better for you? So then they were saying, well, actually 5 would be good. Great, so we'll meet at my office, right? You always want to schedule your appointment here. Why?
It looks great.
That's
There's conference rooms. It's not like dingy or anything like that. It's clean.
Yeah, so that's a huge factor. You're showing this is a professional place of business. We have facilities to accommodate you, right? So you want to set your appointment for here. And by giving them times, right, you're giving them choices. So you might say, would Monday at 3 or Wednesday at 5 be better for you? So you want to go into it knowing your schedule, right? What are some slots that I have available that I can be trying to plug people into today while I'm hosting this open house? So that was one of the biggest things that I learned was if you find a client that is engaging with you, they are looking for a house, set the appointment while you're at the open house and then follow up with them the next day to confirm. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Monday at noon. And here's the address and so forth.
I have a question. Are you able to, like, if nobody is here, let's just say, well, I can only meet at 6:30.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's why you have your key fob,
Okay.
right? So you can come in here at midnight if you want.
Okay.
That's what, you all have your key fobs, that gets you in the back door. When you come, if you are having an appointment that is after hours, even though it is after hours, you probably want to ask Lisa or Tom to book a room for you,
Mhm.
right? Say I have a meeting with a client on Monday at 6 p.m. They'll book a room for you so it's secured. And then you can open those front doors. They're locked, right? There's a door stop there. So you can prop the doors open to make it inviting for your clients to come in. And then just make sure when you're done with your appointment that you close them again before you go. But yeah, you can meet them here anytime that works for them and for you. That's why you have your key fob.
Great. I have one other question. Have you had anyone refuse to sign? And what do you do if they have refused to sign? Is that a big deal?
Did I ever have anyone refuse to sign?
I don't sign paperwork. I'm not doing this.
Not for this. You know, oftentimes if they did anything, they might leave information off.
Right.
And that's just another opportunity for you to say, if they're represented by another agent, you want to try to get that, because again, if they don't want to give their information,
Right.
but let's get the agent's information so the listing agent can follow up with
Right.
them.
Who's your agent? Yeah.
So in the various forms, are you working with an agent? Yes. So I would always say, and who is that? And and then I would probably write down in there who it was.
Okay.
And then let's see. This one, I think ultimately, this became one of my favorites, because this I would have about 4 or 5 clipboards lined up, and these on them with a pen. And so as people came in, they would grab. I would, introduce myself, say hello, and say if I could ask you to sign in and fill this out as you're walking around the house. You'll notice at the bottom are some questions. If you can check back in with me before you leave, because this will be great information for me to give feedback to the seller. So by having them kind of carry this with them, with my clipboard, with my pen, they would always stop back with it. And then if it wasn't busy, I would have the opportunity to maybe even probe with more questions around what they did or didn't like about this house. And if they weren't working with an agent, again, that's your opportunity to be educated about the market, right? So we talked about door knocking and circle calling, but you can also do research on the MLS, right, beforehand, and find out. One thing to find out is what other open houses are taking place in the same area on the same day that you are, because ultimately when we talk about this being a 7th level open house class, what that means, 7th level is holding more than one house open at a time. So essentially what that means is you're inviting them to visit another property with you after this open house. So when this ends at 3, I'm going to be going over to 123 Main Street. There's an open house going on there. How about if we meet there at 3:30? So that's taking it to the 7th level. Okay. So
The point is to represent them and then go to another house.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So you're building that relationship with them, and you're creating an experience for them that they want to work with you.
Gotcha.
Hi. Yeah. Just hold a moment.
A second, I promise.
Sure. So, we talked about where you're standing. You're letting them kind of go throughout the house. And you don't need to navigate with them, right? So you're not following them through the house. But you want to create an opportunity for them to stop back to you when they're finishing up. Some people would say another opportunity to get their contact information, right? So if they left some things off on the sign-in sheet, would say, would you be curious to know how much this house sells for?
Mhm.
And if they say yes, say, okay, what would be the best email for me to reach you? What would be the best phone number for me to reach you? So then anytime you're committing to providing a level of value or service, you want to make sure you follow through on it, okay? So that's another opportunity to get their contact. And then another way, which we talked about, is saying to someone, I'm going to preview 2 other houses for sale in the neighborhood today at 3:15. If you would like to accompany me, please come back here at 3:15. May I have your cell phone so I can contact you if I'm running late? So again, you're getting their number. I certainly wouldn't want to keep you waiting. That's another way to get their contact information. You know, and so it's how you show up too, right? So, you know, I would always think about, what am I going to wear to my open house? I want to create a positive professional appearance, even though, you know, some people are going to show up in their sweats or their cutoffs, but you're the real estate agent, you're the professional, so would think about that. I would also think about my mindset, right? So am I in a good frame of mind? Am I smiling? Do I have a positive attitude? Am I greeting them with a handshake and a welcome to the open house I'm hosting today? A real warm welcome kind of sets the stage for the house, right? And again, as I shared with you, my first buying client came from an open house. I had never sold a house before, but through their conversation with me, I didn't even have to go back to them to try to set an appointment with them. They had told me at the time, we're going to start looking in September. And I want to say that this was in February, right? So I had put a notation to follow up with them in the summer. So I could start to kind of build up to that time in September when they wanted to work. Now I had put them on my drip campaign, so they were getting my newsletter and things like that. But they reached out to me and said, you know what, we've bumped up our timeline and we really enjoyed talking with you, and we'd like to work with you. So, you know, that was fantastic, right? So that is just because of the conversation that I had with them. So again, you want to get out there, you want to get going, you're going to learn your style, you're going to learn what works for you as you interact with people. Know your properties, read your seller's disclosures, know what's happening in the market around where this house is. So do your research, do your lead gen beforehand. I'll just share this. So this is very old. So I also would partner with some of our mortgage vendors, and you can co-brand marketing. So Diane Malley and I were going to host a first-time home buyer seminar. So this was sort of an opportunity for me to talk about, have you been pre-approved? And you know, we within our office have 3 in-house mortgage lenders that we work with, Citizens Bank, Finance of America, and Guaranteed Rate. Anne-Marie would have business cards, and I would always have a variety of those on my sign-in table, because if they hadn't been pre-approved, you want to encourage them to do that first. You know, you want them to be pre-approved before you start working with them. So that would be what I would, it's their choice who they decide to work with, and it may not be one of those three, but you're giving them a resource, you're giving them a tool, so you're adding value again by showing them where they could start or where they could go. And then I would follow up with Diane and say, 3 people took your card, here are their names and their contact information, so if they didn't reach out to her to get their pre-approval started, she could reach out to them and say, come on in, this will take us 20 minutes to get you pre-approved. So she would help me, and then they get pre-approved, and that would then allow me to move forward with them. So that was sort of a win-win. Let's see. I wanted to talk about the directional signs a minute, and what you do with your leads after your open house. So I mentioned that I put the directional signs up on Friday and or Saturday. So what I would typically do is I would go on the MLS and I would do a map overview of where the house was, and that would show me kind of the cross streets and so forth. And that I would use as well. I think I'm going to want to put 1 here, 2 there, 3, 4, 5, 6. So kind of decide where I was going to put my open house signs. So then I, drive, put them out. And then on Sunday, before I went to the house, I would drive by all of my signs and make sure that they were intact. So, there were times when the sign had, fallen over, or one of the decals that I put on them to show the date, the time, and the day had fallen off. So you can fix all, make sure your signs are in good shape, the arrow's pointing the right way, and give them one sweep before you go to the house on the open house day. And then obviously at the end of the open house, you need to pick them all back up. That's easy, but it's important. You want to have a sign for the front of the house, right? So oftentimes the listing agent will have their sign, and they may have a rider on it that says open house 1 to 3, but I would always put one of my signs in there. And ultimately I actually bought one of those yard flags. Have you seen those? That
Big
says,
ones.
come on in, open house, because I think it just stood out, and I don't know, just kind of carry that with me. So that I would do. And then I know we talked about opening the house. We talked about putting everything back the way you found it. The one thing I will say that, if your open house is 1 to 3, at 3 when you're closing up, lock everything again, and then go and do your close up. So just when the open house isn't happening, lock the doors before you start going back down into the basement. You don't want somebody wandering in, right? So that's another safety tip, is just to make sure that once it's over, lock up, go do your cleanup, and go. Secure the house. Put the key back in the Supra, put it back in the combo box. Okay, and then lastly, let's talk about those leads, right? So you've gathered feedback, you provide that to the listing agent however and whenever they want it. Some have a form they want you to fill out, some just want an email recap, but get it to them with the information they want by the time that they want. Again, you're building a relationship with them, so they want you back to host another open house. And then you've got your leads, right? So do something with them. So even the leads that have agents, right? You cannot represent them, but you can send them a thank you email, right? Or a thank you card, and say, thank you for coming through my open house on Sunday. It was a pleasure to meet you. So you're not engaging in real estate with them, but you are, wow, that's very kind, that's courteous. Because if things don't work out with their current agent, you could pop in mind for that simple gesture, right? The others, You want to add to your database. You want to start them on a drip campaign with your other database contacts. And then you want to place, personal call, obviously. That's just kind of your lead follow-up. Again, it was a pleasure meeting you. I appreciate you coming by. I know we had spoken about you getting pre-approved. How did that go? If you get them on the phone. So you want to stay in touch with them, and then they become part of your lead follow-up. Every lead that you get there, you want to add to your database and keep in touch with. And, so I can remember early on, saying to Anne Marie, oh my gosh, I've called them 4 times. And she would say to me, have they said stop calling me? And I said, no. Then don't stop calling them. Because they will tell you when they've had enough. But, I think that you have to look at it as, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak. And it doesn't mean that you call them and you say the exact same thing every time you talk to them. Think about, what is the item of value that I can give them today? Whether it's some statistics, whether it's what price that home did sell for, whether it's more possible mortgage lenders. So each time you touch them, you can give them another reason why you're calling. But you're keeping your name top of mind in the process that could lead to you building a relationship and then becoming your clients. Okay? All right. What other questions do you guys have about open houses, or things that maybe you're thinking about as you prepare to go find that open house?
I had a question I asked a question to Lisa this morning. Are we allowed to shadow somebody when they're hosting an open house, where you learn, instead of just going straight up to a new open house, being a brand new agent sitting there, fizzling out and all that stuff. So do we get to shadow any of the masters like you?
So you can. That would be a conversation that you would have with Anne Marie.
Okay.
If that's something that you'd like to do, she'd have to find someone that would be open to having someone shadow them. The big thing with that is it would be you shadowing them. So you wouldn't be engaging in any dialogue with the clients. My advice would be dive in the pool.
Okay.
I think that it's not difficult, right? So we talked about how to prepare. I am available if you guys want to show me your open house bag, if you want me to look at your flyer, if there's anything you want my input on, I'm open and available for you guys. My first open house, I was scared. I think I got there almost an hour early, and I was like, that's just my personality. I like to be prepared. I'm not a winger, so. But by the end of the 2 hours, I was like, I got this, And I think that's the biggest thing as newly licensed agents is there will never be a time when you can say, okay, I'm ready now. I know I have all the information that I need. I'm perfect. Now I'll start selling real estate. My biggest learnings came from some of my mistakes. My biggest learnings came from doing. So kind of sitting on the sidelines, waiting for everything to line up and be perfect isn't going to come. So getting out there, doing it, fumbling a little bit is okay. And each one that I did, I got better and better because I started to make it my own. And know what worked and what didn't work and what I said and what like I said, I came back to Anne Marie and said, I made 15 contacts. She's like, how many appointments did you set? I'm like, I didn't set any. So, but it became like I didn't set any yet, right? So I think you have to do the activities to get the results. So, and one of the biggest things that I had to hang my hat on is the activities that you do today will show up in 90 days, right? So you're not going to get instantaneous results. You may sit in an open house, get a client, and get them a house. That could happen right away, but it might take 90 days to get some of those clients that you met at that open house today. It might take you 90 days to get into a relationship with them, but that's the process. And you're feeding that funnel by all the contacts that you make. So you're not going like this. Okay, I'm doing an open house, and then I'm not going to do another one for 2 months. I'm doing an open house every week. I'm getting 20 contacts at that open house, and I got 20 on my circle calls, and I got 20 on my door knocking. I've made 60 contacts just for that one open house, and I'm doing that every single week. 90 days, the business is going to start to show up. And it may not just be a buyer, like we started the class with, you may get a listing as well, right? So I would encourage you to get out there to do them. I'm very passionate about the open houses. You might be able to see that. I love the door knocking because it gave you that face to face. And people will often say, weren't you scared like that they were gonna yell at you?
I think this is more helpful than just doing a cold, like.
Yeah, I like door knocking better than cold calls.
Yeah.
Like just seeing people.
Yeah, some people, and that's the thing about this business. We don't all get there the same way, right? So you pick what works for you, and if door knocking works for you and you'd rather make phone calls, that's fine.
But at least when you knock on the door, you have something to talk about versus like, hey, just wanted to let you know.
Oh, I forgot, I was gonna tell you one of my favorite door knocking stories. So I was door knocking on a beautiful Saturday, spring day. And there was a husband and wife outside working in their yard, and they were actually splitting irises, the plants. And so we started a conversation about their beautiful landscaping, and I told them I was doing the open house, and they're like, oh, we have all of these irises. Could you use some? And I was like, yeah. Like, well, tomorrow after the open house, swing by and we'll leave some out here for you. So I did. I came back. There's a box of little iris bulbs by their mailbox. I took them home. I had the most beautiful irises this year.
Aww.
They're beautiful, beautiful. And that was just a relationship that I made door knocking.
Yeah.
And something that I found too, like they brighten my day. I know I brightened theirs. And you'll run into people when they open the door, they're like this. But just by my energy, the way I talk to them, by the time they closed the door, they had a smile on their face. And to me, that's worth it. So, that's just my 2 cents. Let's see if I got everything. Obviously, you'll have your phone with you. That's a given. We talked about arriving. We talked about locking. We've got your bag, researching the area, putting your signs up. I think we covered it all. So does everyone know how to get onto the KW Exton coaching page, resources, and pull this up? Yeah, so it's kwextoncoaching.com, and then under the toolbar at the top, there's forms. And if you go to that forms, you're going to find all kinds of things in there that you're going to need. So some of the things that are listed on here to put in your bag are actually on that page as well. But you'll see 7th level, how to hold a 7th level open house, and that's what this is. So you can use this as your little checklist to make sure you're getting your stuff set up, and you don't have to do what I did. You do what you want, but for me, I found like I was like, where are those consumer notices? And then just putting them in a file allowed me to kind of get everything really easy. Okay?
Thank you.
Thoughts, questions? All right. You know where my office is?
I don't.
You don't?
No. But I'm definitely gonna because I want to jump on open house right away. So I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right. So be like, so hi.
Yeah, so what's today? Today's Wednesday. If you want to do one this weekend, you could go find some people right now.
Could. I have a wedding on Saturday, but I have Sunday off.
Yeah. All right.